Hello. Welcome back to This Round is on Me. It's so good to be back, recharged and refreshed after a short summer break. Now, I'm not going to remind myself of the epic trip we took this summer, but one bit I have to tell you is that if you haven't been to Mexico, put it on that bucket list right now. It's an explosion of the yummiest food, fabulous drinks, and a design sensibility that is unparalleled. It was a completely unplanned part of our trip and something we decided to do last minute while traveling around the US, when, much to my very pleasant surprise, I realized that I didn't need a visa to enter since I had a valid US visa. Who would have thunk, right? Anyway, speaking of accidents, my guest today is someone I've been looking forward to having on the show forever, but it just never happened for some reason. And then accidentally happened to be sussing him out for membership to an entrepreneur network that I'm part of called the Ascent Foundation. And I literally trapped him into agreeing to be a guest on the show right after that. So here we are with Harshil Karia, who at the young age of 20 started his entrepreneurial journey with Foxy Moron. And what started off as a print company at first later turned into a digital company under his leadership. Today, he's the founder of Schbang, a holistic media solutions company where he's delivered a whopping 450% increase in just a few years, putting the company on the Financial Times High Growth Companies Asia Pacific 2020 list. Wow. He has a couple of other ventures up his sleeve, including his latest one called Level, in collaboration with Ranveer Alabadia, which of course we'll be talking a lot more about in this episode. Now, I usually introduce my guest before we get into our conversation, but for this episode, I actually re-recorded my introduction, and that's because it needs to come with this disclaimer. It's the longest episode I've recorded on this show, but believe me when I say it'll be the best hour 40 minutes you've spent in a while. So get ready to have your mind blown right after the short break. So welcome to the show, Harshil. It's so great having you here today.
Thanks, Gauri. Thanks for having me.
And, like we were saying that we don't really know each other before this, but I think we've interacted more in the last 2 weeks and in a very strange way with through Ascent and, which is a great foundation. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah.
But great to have you here. And
I'm so happy to be here. It was so nice to listen to you on Ascent. And then, how you spoke about the trust groups and how you spoke about how you've been associated. And then I had a chance to hear your talk on YouTube about, the journey that you've been through.
Yeah.
So that was super interesting also. So I'm
so
looking
you've
forward
done your
to listen.
research as well.
Yeah, a little bit for sure. And and of course, the work that you do is very well renowned. And I think everybody has a great time when they go to the places that you run. So I think it's a pleasure to be here. And thanks for having me here.
Great. So, for those of you listening, there's so much about Harshil's journey on various other podcasts that he's been on. So I'm not gonna, and there's a great episode with Varun Dugirala. There's a great episode with Ranveer Alabadia. So definitely, you should tune in. And I was sort of riveted the whole way. But I'm actually gonna, focus on a little bit on two sort of very specific aspects that intrigued me while I was listening about your journey. And so very briefly, Harshil started a company called Foxy Moron back, when you were 20?
About 2021, yeah.
So while you were in college, I'm guessing. And, you started with a bunch of friends and, or you joined a bunch of friends who had sort of started this and you brought your side of things to the business and then sort of exited that company about 5-6 years later and started Schbang, which is what I think everybody knows you for right now.
Yeah.
And you're also in the process of, you have launched another company called Level. And we'll talk about all of this, in the course of the conversation today. But what I wanted to pick your brains about was you've had co-founders at all these sort of points, right? When you started out, with Schbang and now with Level. And most recently, you brought a new co-founder on for Level. my co-founder is my husband.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to just understand this dynamic of how you identify a co-founder and what happens when sort of views, diverge, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a long conversation. But maybe I should actually start with, the third co-founder we've just onboarded at Level, because I think that's a more, I guess, more mature way of dealing with it. So we went about it in two ways. One is Ayush, who's just joined us, who's just joined Ranveer and me as the third co-founder on Level. And a little bit of context on Level is we're building, what we're calling it is to help people supercharge their mind. So we're building a product which has got meditation, which has got mind muscle workouts. So the workouts that you do with real slow, real focus, because it helps increase your focus. And we've got affirmations and journaling, and we build this product for students of competitive exams.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's basically to supercharge your mind and supercharge your brain power is what we're building Level with. So it's more about taking meditation mainstream, and we're doing meditation all the major Indian languages, which has not been done before, and that kind of stuff is what we're doing there. So when it came to really choosing a third co-founder between Ranveer and me, I think this was slightly easier because between us, I'm running the Schbang business also along with Level, and Ranveer is running his media business along with Level. And we felt somewhere that there was the need for a central anchor. This was slightly easier because there was the need for a central anchor between the two of us who's running point on,
On Level, right.
on Level full
Right.
really through. And then we said that what we needed is actually, because we've got two different strengths, I've got the ability to be more bottom line oriented and just like focus a bit more sharply on the vision and those kind of things. And Ranveer is a genius at his work with marketing and content. And what we needed was somebody who was really very, very fine and detailed with the technical stuff, very, very fine and detailed with process orientation. Because when you're vision and bottom line, then sometimes process takes a backseat.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're a creator, then process takes a backseat. So like somebody who's more a stickler for process. So a couple of things that that gave us the confidence that look, Ayush is the guy, is because we went through a product market fit exercise and we'd heard about it, but the way he conducted that exercise scientifically, because we went out on public beta and then we got all the users to download. I mean, we got about 10,000 users to download it, and then we took a sample of those 300 users. And the exercise of product market fit is that basically about 45% of users
Mm-hmm.
who download your beta product have to say that if tomorrow the product went away, then they would be heavily disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So you ask them, would you be heavily disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or you wouldn't care?
Okay.
And then if 45% of people do that, then you kind of get your aha audience. And then what you then do is you go inside that audience and you figure out who that audience is. And that's where it came to us saying this is students who are studying for competitive exams. They need this. So the whole product market fit started coming out that way,
So did you realize that it was going to be for students doing competitive exams after you'd launched it and did this?
Yeah, we sharpened it there.
So who did you think it was going to be used by when you came up with the idea?
I mean, so when we started it, we said we had a tagline called the Game of Growth. Now we've tuned it to supercharge your mind.
Okay.
And so we're like, we were tuning it between supercharge your brain and supercharge your mind. But it was the Game of Growth. So it was it still got gamification in it. It was a game-based platform to make the process of your growth journey more entertaining and more fun. And that's why, so if you finish a meditation, you get 10 XP, and you finish a workout, you get some XP.
Right.
And, so it was that. And then, foolish pitch at the start in hindsight, but a lot of things that you do, then they become foolish in hindsight. We said that, hey, there's the gaming market and there's a wellness market. And if you combine two, then it's a very big market. Classic mistake. But then we showed it to gamers, and gamers are like, hey, where is the game really? So
you have to meditate. Yeah.
Yeah. So then that wasn't working. And then, so Ayush actually joined us as an intern. So he wrote to me after seeing Ranveer's podcast with me. And he said that, hey, I just feel like, there's a connection here. And I feel like, we'd have a good time working together. So I just want to come down. I'm just finishing off with my last semester in IIT Madras. And I think that, it would be very interesting to work with you. But I have a condition. I want to work only with you. So I said, okay, this is interesting because we're just putting Level together. So he came first day, he'd come wearing a monkey topi in the middle of a Bombay summer. And, I was like, this guy is interesting. So, so it was a good first day, and then we got along really well, and we saw that we had a lot of shared interests. We looked at things in very similar ways, but from two different perspectives. Right. And I always keep talking to him about this, which is, I think, critical again now with choosing a co-founder, which is that when I look at something and when he looks at something, like we study, for example, we study every Sunday together just for fun. We study the Bhagavad Gita. Mm-hmm. So it's more like less like a religious approach to the text and more life approach to the text. And the way he questions things, I question more from the heart, and he's questioning more from logical. Like, can you just break this down for me, this shloka, and why this shloka is saying it this way? If this way, then why not this way? So, and we always arrive at the end conclusion, but we arrive at, from two different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think that's beautiful, because then you are actually looking at a co-founder who's syncing with you, with your thoughts, but has a very different route. Mm-hmm. So what you then end up doing is you learn from their, the way they're looking at it. So the amount, now I understand a lot more about engineering, and when they talk about German engineering, for example, I used to always wonder, what is German engineering. Now, after having been with Ayush and seeing his variety of Excel sheets and processes, and the way we break it down. So this product market fit exercise that I was talking about, which was really, then it means going out to consumers. It means then being analytical. It means then really breaking down, okay, for the ones who'd be very disappointed, what didn't you like? What would you like us to improve? And then we start only focusing on that. Mm-hmm. So it's a very,
it's like a micro, like deep, like really deep diving into analyzing. Yeah.
And my mistake before that used to be that I used to think that, okay, you go into too many micro details, it's
too much analysis.
But then I started having a deep respect for that. Mm-hmm. Once I started seeing that. And I said, okay, actually he's doing what I would do in another way.
It's very interesting that you say this, because, we sort of approach our business as restaurateurs very differently, right? So you don't think about, you don't review the product market fit after you've launched, right? Because it's very hard to then to pivot a concept once you've opened a restaurant, for example, right? So it's something that you have to be very sure of before you get into it, and you don't have that chance to kind of experiment. You can do maybe like, with friends and family and things, but that's such a small audience that you're testing ground, that it's not really something that many restaurateurs have the luxury of doing. Yeah. So it's very interesting to hear that, but it's an app, but that's the advantage of tech, right? Yeah. That with tech you can do all that. But coming back to this question of co-founders, so I think, one thing that I'm getting is that being aligned on a goal, but then coming at it from different routes possibly is one advantage of having a co-founder. And of course, everyone has different strengths. Like, you wouldn't know the tech stuff, obviously, the way he does.
And like Ranveer is, for example, in Level is totally different angle. Like the way he brings in his energy on the kind of content that we should kind of build. So one of the big competitors for us is Calm. And where Calm really took off is with their sleep stories. Mm-hmm. So if you listen to Michael Acton Smith and their journey on building Calm, was a lot of that. So sleep story was a huge differentiator. Mm-hmm. And for us then, therefore, how do we design the content such that it has repeat value is where Ranveer has a huge kind of standpoint. So it's, to compare the restaurant analogy, it's more like, he's really the chef founder. So he's kind of like, he knows what's got to go inside.
But, I'm digressing, but I actually, when you say this now, when I'm thinking about it, say you're talking to someone, your target audience is someone who's doing a competitive exam. Is it like a one-time use essentially then for them, or is it something that you can continue to gain from long after you finished your competitive exams? Like, is it, and then are you also then becoming, are you digressing from that TG if you do become valuable to people out of that space?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I just finished 5 years of my journey with meditation. And I've been doing that pretty much for every day over the last 5 years. And I think that once you start, you don't stop. So I don't think the material that we're catering to, the material that we're catering is for just that life stage. It's just the entry point, the way we package the product, who we reach out to at the start. So for example, our launch is planned in Kota. And we have a roadshow with Ranveer in Kota. He's incredibly famous. We did a test in Ranchi with him. Huh. And he just put out a story saying, I'm in Ranchi, and there was a park filled with people. So we're going into, and also then it allows us, it's sharp because it allows us to go to edtech and says that, look, we're the softer side of edtech.
Yeah.
You study hard, but you need to be able to meditate at the same time, and you need to still your mind, because what is happening, it's working in two ways, because also the neuroscience shows us that before the age of 25, your prefrontal cortex, which is essentially helping you with wisdom and all of that stuff, is it's not integrated as easily with the rest of your brain. So a lot of the process of meditation helps with that. Then and also we looked at the neuroscience and we said that what is basically helping you do is helping you increase the performance of your mind. So you increase your focus, you increase your memory, you increase your resistance to stress, and you're likely to stay in that better state for longer if you're in a state of meditation. So it's just a practice, like you go to the gym, you do this. So I saw it as, look, hey, just the way Nike popularized running, our mission has got to be to popularize meditation to as many people. But you have to start somewhere, because you can't talk to everybody, because we don't have the resources. We're self-funding this between Ranveer and myself so far. So we have to have a real good entry point into the market, because everybody could be your consumer, but who's the more likely consumer? Who's the one who will buy it more? So then we saw that, hey, actually students are more interested in that phase in their life. And then we're confident that once they're going through that phase, they will, continue. And then I think that gives us enough of a right to be able to then go to another market saying, look, there's now 1 million consumers using this. There's so many people subscribing. So now we have the right to go to the next market. But here we felt like the partnerships are good and, all of that stuff. All of this I'm talking as if it's done. It's not done. It's in the process of being done.
No, but it's a work in progress, and you're getting closer to where you sort of need to be. And, speaking of edtech and being self-funded, I hope that stays for a while, because looking at what's happening around in that industry, it seems like... it's better that you are the master of your own money for some time.
That's true.
But, now let's sort of go back to, I guess, a little bit of hindsight and, having the benefit of that. What did you do differently this time round with Ayush, with Ranveer, that was a learning from, your past?
So I think, the learning from my past, so I've had 2 times that I've done this, once with Schbang and once with Foxy Moron. And with Schbang, I think it was pretty organic that it came together. So we are 3 of us who run Schbang. So my 2 co-founders are Sohil, who's my younger brother, and Akshay, who's a friend of ours from school. So we had some history together. All 3 of us had worked before also in Foxy Moron. So Akshay was looking after the Delhi office, and he'd been a junior of mine in school. So
you knew each other's working style, and obviously knew each other's siblings. So it wasn't completely
so I don't know if there's any real lesson there, except that, what we've done in Schbang is that we have a very strong agreement between all the 3 partners. So we have strong, and I think what works well between us is that we are very, very clear with who does what role. So, for example, Sohil is very strong with technology. So as a service business, we're 1,000 people service business and growing, and we call ourselves a creative and technology transformation company. So companies hire us for their creative and technology transformation. And so you got really the 2 legs of creative and technology being in Sohil and Akshay. So Sohil's really strong with technology. He's strong with, fiddling around with building new tech. He's also really instrumental in shaping our MarTech offering, which I think is now, as we grow out internationally. So in the UK, we're mainly focusing on growth marketing and marketing automation, because that's a strong service that you could run in India and you could sell across the world. So it's kind of like a variation of the IT service, which is, I think,
with a creative,
with a creative bent, but it's more like customer experience more than creative. So it's really like, at every juncture of the customer journey. So you get on a flight, what do you see? You get off a flight, what do you see? Then once you cross the screen, what do you see? So how do you build that integrated experience, and how do you build the underlying technology or deploy the underlying technology to do that? So that's Sohail's strength. And Akshay's strength has been always more on the creative side and on the social side. And he's also like a very patient listener to run teams across operations. So that's what his strength is. So they're effectively running those 2 pillars of that. I sort of sit somewhere in between that. So my upbringing is I love advertising. So, that's what I've always done. I love digital. So I kind of very easily fit into the world that Akshay builds. And even the world that Sohail builds, I now very easily fit into. because I kind of am able to tie those two together. And I'm, for example, responsible for the direction and the growth of the company. So I kind of decide which direction we'll be growing in, and what are the larger strategic calls we need to take in terms of how do we drive the vision. And the other parts that are strong for me are the finance, which I've now slowly gotten much stronger at over the last few years. Human resource management, culture is a own responsibility between the three of us. So it's balanced in the sense that we don't get in each other's crosshairs. And I think that's, I deliberately use the word crosshairs because when you are strong people, and most founders and co-founders are strong people, so you don't really like it if you're you're doing things a certain way. It's a combination of things. One
But
is,
it's true, like one person does end up being a little more sort of stronger, I guess, voice
yeah,
than
so
the
like in
others.
Schbang, for example, like we've structured that I take the title of founder, not co-founder, and they take the title of co-founder. So in Schbang, I've been sort of, and that was one of the things that we agreed in the way we structure ourselves. But that doesn't mean that I have jurisdiction on all the things that they do, because the things that they do, they're damn good at.
Right.
And it would be stupid for me to kind of go into those areas. More, I have to learn from it, and I have to be able to nurture it, and I have to be able to then, tie it in. So, yeah, I agree with you. My point of view is that I think there should be one captain in a ship. You can't have, all captains in a ship, and which is where I think things went wrong at Foxymoron, because I think there was too many people trying to be the captains of the ship. And, so I felt there it was two issues. It was, one is some, people without competency trying to be captain of the ship. And for me, culturally, it wasn't a fit because we had lost a large account and had called for a meeting. And I know that was an aha moment for me, saying that, look, I can't be in this. I don't know. I didn't deal with it in the best possible way. I've spoken about it, saying how I was quite immature about in the way I dealt with it. So I still acknowledge that I wasn't at my best when the way I took my actions. But I'm pretty sure the decision was correct, because we'd lost one of our largest businesses. The reason we had lost the largest business was, effectively I was running the entire show. We were 4 partners. I was running the entire operational show in terms of, we had like 6-8 divisions, most of which I'm, reporting directly to me. I'm facing the clients. I was feeling stifled because I'm doing that, but I'm not really shaping the way the company is going. So I said, okay, let's reorganize. Let's, you guys take some work on some of these divisions. And the guy who was supposed to take some of the load off, he basically lost the largest business. And there was no point of view saying that, look, I need to really introspect, or can you help me understand where I went wrong? So there's a lot of I guess it's also that age, and also it's age, plus I felt like the temperament wasn't right. I wouldn't, kind of approach things that way, saying that just because yes, you're a strong person, and yes, you're powerful, but because you have to be able to understand when to retreat also, and know when you made a mistake. So that wasn't happening.
And when to ask for help, right? Because just because you're sort of the leader at the top doesn't mean you know everything either. So, no, you're right. I think it's, I guess it comes with experience and, being more sure of yourself as well, and, knowing what you want, and then being able to identify people
and not really having a sense of entitlement, because I think it's not about having entitlement. It's about having a responsibility. It's about you having to serve. And I know there's it's talk, but it's also, it has to be real, because you cannot just speak those words without feeling them. And I think that's what went wrong with me in my first venture, and then there was, it was not a great experience towards the end of it. I'm very glad and grateful that I went through that first experience, and I was able to build that company and had so many lessons on it. But I think if you have co-founders, there needs to be a clear distinction of role and clear distinction of strength, number one. Number two is that culturally and, in terms of the way you approach things, you need to be aligned. So that is definite. And that's a very, very big part of it, right?
Yeah, but I think, in my experience, of course, goals can be aligned, and just because of the nature of our business, where certain people have certain skills, and the responsibilities also get divided. I think the expectation of, when you say, okay, someone's in charge of a certain department or whatever, and it's learning to trust that it's being taken care of, right? And where you always feel like, no, but you should be doing more. There should be this happening and there's that happening. And I think that's where sometimes things break down, where the expectation for someone else who's responsible for a certain part of the business, you feel should be handled differently. And I guess, that's what I've seen in our industry, not just, in my personal experience.
So what can you talk a little bit more about that?
So, maybe where obviously in a typical restaurant setup at the top, you'll have someone who's a chef who's, obviously the skill is the actual product or service. And then you have the business side of it, which is the restaurateur, right? And very often it could be the same person. But in my experience of the last sort of 12 years in this business, I don't think it can be the same person. I think that they're very distinctive personalities in a way. And it needs to be sort of a balance. And I think that, when, for example, if you have a chef and you sort of, they're obviously in charge of the kitchen, in charge of what goes out to the guests, you at some point have to obviously let them do their thing and you kind of trust them because that's their responsibility. But often as a restaurateur, you feel things should be different. It should be done, things should be done differently. And I guess finding that sort of, there's a fine line between, letting someone take full charge and responsibility and feeling that they're not doing, their job. So I think that's a very tricky thing to
for sure
achieve. And that's usually where sort of...
Yeah, that's where the tension points are.
Exactly.
And that, I think that's all the more where your alignment on the things beyond the workplace actually help build that bridge of trust.
Yeah.
Because then you have the ability to open up and say that, look, this is where I'm struggling here, or this is where I think I'm doing it really well, but it's somewhere not shaping up.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I need a fresh pair of eyes on it. And that's where, kind of being able to do that together.
Yeah, it's very challenging.
Yeah.
It's definitely a tough thing to do, but I think you're absolutely right. Like, and that's where often maybe having a board or having, sort of outside sort of soundboards and mentors can kind of help to change perspective. Because when you're the only person or it's you and the other person, often it's hard to kind of see a different perspective on
or
things.
Maybe also just spending more time together, because I feel like a lot of what happens sometimes is that, especially with co-founders.
But that's also tricky though, because you sometimes want to keep that.
No, I'm saying like I'm not saying spend, like crazy amounts of time together, but like, for example, between Sohail, Akshay and myself, we know that we have 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday that we cannot miss.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we have a lot of meetings in which we're in common and we keep talking to each other through the day for smaller things. But it's that 9:30 to 10:30 which we cannot miss. That's the one where we know, and that space is a sacred space because it has a format to it, and we just stick to that format. And that format has been designed to make sure that you're able to open up and you're able to say like, hey, what is it that's priority for you? What is it that you're struggling with? And is there any feedback for the others? So if it's just a framework like that, and you're doing it consistently, then you know that you're building on, and then you're always bringing something from the last time. So that's what I mean by spending time. I mean, and with between.
But that's actually really important. And, funnily enough, we started doing something similar. I mean, not just co-founders, but with very sort of senior management. And it's, I think, going to be a game changer for us because, firstly, you're not waiting for a problem to escalate. You're in touch regularly enough where you can identify problems and challenges early enough on. And also there's just more communication, focused communication, not just communication in general, because that happens in the course of business, all day, every day. So I think that's really, but I like the 3 points that you follow as your agenda.
With Ayush and Ranveer, it's actually very different. So we just hang out. So most Saturdays, we work, but the Saturday day of work for us is just a hangout. So like we, like this is more like bro talk, but it's like, it's like we actually see each other as that. And that's where a lot of trust also builds. And I think there the dynamic is slightly different, right? Because it's the reason we can do that. And I think that's why it's an outlier, is because it's not super high stakes for Ranveer and me in the sense that, yes, we want to succeed, but at the same time, and we desperately want to succeed at that. There's a burning desire to succeed, but we've kind of crossed one or two bridges. So it's not like, hey, my life is going to go in this thing. And then with Ayush coming in now, there's a sense of like balance to that again. But at the same time, the culture is still like, we're three guys who are just, we inherently trust each other. There's a lot of love between the three. And that's what we build on that Saturday. So it's slightly different.
Do your Schbang co-founders ever feel like there's any kind of conflict of your time having started a sort of second business parallelly?
Yeah, it's a little difficult. So I'm right now working crazy hours. So it's, like most days it's a 12-hour work day and there's another 6 hours on the Saturday. So it's, I'm saying crazy work hours, but I'm really enjoying it. And I've slotted down my times when I'm with Level. So most of the time it's like 2 or 3 hours slots in the day, which are either early in the morning or like sometimes late in the evening. So I've kind of slotted my hours that way. It's not easy, but we've not had any conflict as such so far. Because I mean, we're in a super stage of growth, even with Schbang. So we had like 66% growth last year, and then we're slated for another 70% growth this year. And my job to, like as long as I'm doing my job.
You're delivering on your responsibility. Yeah. So speaking of growth and,
And sorry, like, the other last thing I want to mention is that I know that when I'm not doing my job well, I have to pull in the extra hours in one or the other. So that kind of balancing makes sure that it's, it's
I mean,
done.
you're accountable. So at the end of the day, it's on you how you manage it. Yeah. On that note, we'll take a quick break and be right back. Welcome back to This Round is on Me. Coming back to the point about growth, and you mentioned earlier that you're at sort of, 1,000 employees, and that's amazing. And I wish I had your level of year-on-year growth. I think we would all be very happy. But just, coming back to the number of employees, I think in your business, in your industry rather, it's a lot of millennials and Gen Z, population that makes up your employees. What's that been like working with, a rather sort of unique generation of employees and work culture and work ethics that I think, in my experience, I find is very, very different from when, I was in my early 20s and just getting started with work.
Yeah, it's different for sure. So the first thing I want to say is that I usually try to avoid the word employees.
Fair enough.
For me.
You're the second person who said this actually to me today, and someone else referred to them as associates. And what do you team?
Team, yeah, we say team.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, just digression, but I was in my first internship in it was a company then called Dentsu Marcom, not owned by the Dentsu guys who run it now. I mean, it was still a different kind of joint venture. And I was sitting at the desk and I used to come in every day and I used to see that the boss of the place where I was doing the internship, he used to sit in another like Bajuwala building. So like Bajuwala building in the sense that it was a lovely building. It was a nice bungalow and then the bungalow had a tower. So it's almost like he used to sit in the ivory tower, So to get to him, you had to be able to book something with his assistant. And I don't think it was that many people also. I think it was like 80 to 100 people. So I was like, okay. And then there used to be, and it started permeating into the culture. And it started permeating into the culture where the creative director would come in. That's the department I was working in. He would come into the office in the morning, shut his door and just sit and think. And then the creative team would talk about the client servicing team in a certain way. And the client servicing team would talk about the creative team in a certain way. And I was like, this doesn't seem that complicated to run. But it's
not the way to.
It doesn't seem right either. And then coincidentally, I had a letter sent on email by my dad to me regarding, it was a letter written by John Bogle, who is the founder of the Vanguard Fund. And they're the largest fund in the world. I think they do about now $3.5-4 trillion in asset management at the lowest cost possible to end consumers, because basically they follow the process of indexing with respect to investing. So there's no management fees. It's basically you index in the S&P 500 and that's about it. You put your money there and go to sleep, because his philosophy was that that's the best way and the safest way to grow your money, which is a separate thing. But in the letter, he wrote about why he called it Vanguard. And he said that, I looked at my team as like so to your point about the crew, this long coming back to that, but I looked at my team as, we called it because the ship that of one of my idols, the captain of that ship, and the ship was called the HNS Vanguard. And so he says we don't refer to our team as employees, we say crew. Yeah, so I think that had an impact on me in terms of being able to build a workplace. And I've always felt like, I see us also in some analogy like that, like a ship. And I, recently had a town hall with my team, and I said very simply that, look, some of you are here because you're going to go to university. Some of you are here because you want to join a large corporate. And if you're here for that, you're in the right place, because large corporates recruit from us and they give amazing increments.
Right.
So you're here. Good job. Third is you might want to go to a competing agency. I think you're going to make a mistake. So, but good luck to you. But even if you do, then that's good. Or you're here to grow inside of this company. And whatever you do, you need to make your time here count. So, even if you want to go to university, you're going to need that portfolio. You want to go to a large corporate, they're going to give you that increment basis, the work that you've done here, and we will promote you heavily. So our social media has a lot of even if I'm putting out work on my LinkedIn, I'm just I make it a point to tag the copywriter or the designer or whatever it is, whoever's the team behind it, because then industry is looking and saying that, okay, that is what it is. So I see a lot of our role is also feeding talent into the marketing and technology industry. So, okay, that's
very
fine.
Interesting.
It's like I'm living in an industry which has 30% attrition year on year. 20...
But I believe you guys have had some of the lowest attrition, in fact.
It goes up and down, but even if it's low is 20%, so it's not like
abnormally low. Okay.
Abnormally low, yeah. So it's, relative parameters, but the reality still is that there's a lot of people who are going to leave. So you need to build a culture which has a high performance culture for people in the time that they're here. So that's one thing that we try to do. And you need to get people in fast, and you need to be able to get people to be tuned in fast.
But that's easier said than done.
Yeah, the way we break it down is that, we spend a lot of time on our induction. So our entire induction is done through a series of podcasts. So depending on the, the department that you join, you could just listen and you could plug into the podcast while going on a run or, driving to work or whatever it is. So the whole thing is done on a podcast, and the podcast is a conversation between 4 or 5 people who run that department. So you kind of, you get the soft side of it. And then the first 3 days is, there's a formalized induction, and we do our induction groups. So we have one person who just runs inductions, and he does it really well, Jeremy. And so we've spent a lot of time really fine-tuning the science of the induction, which is that, because you need to get immersed in the culture, you need to get immersed into how the organization tree works, you need to get immersed into, your own, how your salary is going to be received, how you're going to get your compensation, like your slips, all of that kind of stuff. We've got a largish manual called the Schbanger's Guide, which is all about all the rules of the organization, etc. We've got a destination called the Schbang Wiki. And I'd love to show you that actually, because it's a wiki of all of the, so we have our best presentations put up there. We have process documents put up there. So if you are in a creative...
So like a repository where basically...
Yeah. So like one of the things that I also learned from, I'd asked actually a consultant saying that, how do the large consulting companies like PwC and all, how they scale globally? So he said that really what is the backbone of it is a knowledge management system. So that our Schbang Wiki is actually a knowledge management system, which is open to everybody who's in the organization.
It just reminded me of some very dark days at PwC, by the way. But we leave that for another day.
So so that wiki is super, super important, and that's broken down by department. And we also have something called the Schbang Academy, where we have over 150 trainings pre-recorded. And the way we build the academy structure is also, we saw that we were actually calling in trainers to teach people, and we were paying them money. So we said, instead, let's pay our own people to you get one set of compensation to build a training, and then you get a second set of compensation to deliver the training. So, there's a mentor, master, and monitor kind of system for the Schbang Academy, and we have a dedicated academy team who basically runs that program. And the way they fund themselves is because they also do training for corporate clients, and we do training for, we also run the Schbang Academy through our handles. So we have weekend courses there, which is open to Schbangers for free to join. So
But
yeah,
also people who aren't working with Schbang?
yeah, for people who aren't
Yeah.
working with Shebang, those are paid courses for them. So that's how we make the money, and then for our people it's free. And also the corporate training is another good source of revenue for the academy. So that kind of helps. So there's the podcast, there's the academy, there's the wiki. So there's a lot of process in that. Plus we're now sitting, one of the big transitions that we did over the COVID period is to do more digitization. So we moved to Slack. That was a major change because finding people on WhatsApp, etc., knowing who somebody works in Delhi on a particular business to find them. So you can't do that. So within Slack, there are lots of different Slack channels. There's a lot of automations inside Slack also that, hey, welcome to Slack, Shebang. These are the inductions in case you haven't heard them. These are the podcasts in case you haven't heard them. And then you have, so that's how the culture starts building up. And then we're sitting, people management is done on Zoho People. So on Zoho People, I could tune in to try to understand who works on Tata Communications in the tech team. So I just tie in that and I get the name of the 6 people. So then for me to find people is easier. There's an interactive org tree on that. So if I want to know who's working inside Delhi under this group solutions manager, and then who is that? Or like if I get a name saying, hey, this person has done a damn good job, I put it in, I know who they're reporting into. So I can talk to them saying, hey, this person is good. So please watch out for them and, groom them nicely.
Interesting.
So it's a lot of method to be able to, because you're sitting in a reality of.
So accept it and basically work with it.
Yeah. And that's why in the town hall I said, you're going to go. So I can't like hold on or hold anything against you. So one of the people I read on LinkedIn, he was like, what do companies think that they need to, like in our old days, people used to be there for 20 years and somebody said to me that I'm leaving too soon and companies shouldn't think like that. I said, okay, cool. Companies shouldn't think like that. I don't think companies are thinking like that today. And simultaneously, I don't think people who work in companies should be, judging companies for however they think. I mean, it's a free world now. So you come into a place, you give your best, you get out. If it doesn't vibe with you, you move on.
Right.
So and I think that's how companies are becoming, like destinations of that. So.
But there is a competitive element, right? So, what you're saying sounds very zen, and I hope I get there one day with how I sort of feel about. Of course, there's always heartbreak when people move on, like good people move on. So, isn't that something that you sort of struggle with ever?
That's human. That's human, no? So like if it's, and especially if it's like your top people, then it's going to be.
Yeah, and that's it's funny because you are always striving for excellence and you want to be best in class. And that comes with the flip side that when you're best in class, you're the first one to kind of, your ship is the first one to be attacked in a way for all the loot, right? So it's still something that I think I struggle with. And you talked about sort of bringing people in as fast. I think that that's definitely a challenge, especially when it comes to.
Yeah, maybe for a business like yours, it's a bit more challenging.
I mean, we've also sort of thought a lot about just skilling people on the job as opposed to trying to look for all the skills, because it is it's definitely there isn't such a huge pool to hire from, and with the way the industry is growing, there's a lot more demand than supply. But coming back to,
so how do you deal with so it's interesting when you speak about the heartbreak or the burn when somebody leaves for a competitor, and I think that's natural, to be honest. I think anybody who says they don't feel the burn is lying. But how do you kind of deal with this interesting that you speak about, that there's high demand for jobs and in the market outside, and then therefore your supply is constricted. So how do you make sure that you get the best and you keep them and you groom them?
So I don't think we necessarily look at getting the best. I think we look at getting people who have a desire to work with you and who have a great attitude and are hungry to learn from you, and they feel that they can learn from you. And yes, it could be that they want to learn from you. They may not express that, but they want to learn from you for 6 months, a year, and move on and either do their own thing or whatever, move on to the next highest bidder. But it's, I think that's where we've realized is the way to keep moving is not just look for sort of great CVs, but bring in people who have the right mindset and obviously, can show in some, in a short period of time that they have the capability as well, because it is a skilled job, at least as far as, the kitchen
And then
side
are
of things
you
are
are you
concerned.
like, how do you ensure that there's reason enough for them to be in there?
That's definitely a challenge
Because you guys
because
have grown also, like then you've expanded your business. I'm assuming then that accommodates a lot of
it
the.
does to some extent, but the expansion has been, it's been in very different areas. So again, different skill set requirements. So it's not like, we've got a pizza brand and we've got an Indian, brand and we've got a bakery. So it's not as, interchangeable skills. That there is a certain experience that is required
Mm,
to be in that. But having said that, that is a challenge because people might want to, one of the key ways to do it is to invest in people, right? In their growth, in their sort of learning. But beyond a point, you have to kind of figure out if that's something that's going to enhance your own business as
yeah,
well, right? Like
absolutely.
you're not just investing in people for the sake of investing and
Yeah,
holding on to people. It has
yeah,
to somehow come back into,
yeah,
um,
and which is where I feel like a lot of this was so a friend of mine told me that an uncle told him that the answer to most problems is growth. So if you can grow your own company fast enough, then you'll always have a solution to most of the problems that are sitting in front of you. And I, like, the moment I heard it, it was like, that's what I got to really do. Because if somebody, I mean, like, I had some people I had to give 100% increment to last year, and I was okay with that because of the value that they brought to the business, because of the input that they had on the growth of the business. And that's why I say that, we are chasing these growth rates. At some point in time, it's going to flatline. I think in since we spoke about ascent at the start, Mr. Mariwala writes in his book, the
mhm,
power of compounding. And from 91 to 2000, the kind of, the growth that they had by just sticking to the compounded growth that they had by just sticking to a certain kind of growth rate consistently every year, which was, between 20 and 30%, the kind
mhm,
of, they had consistent growth. So I was listening to Mr. Premji also speak in one of his talks. It was a video on YouTube which he gave at Stanford, which was like talking about the fact that Wipro, if they grew compounded annually for a certain period of time, he knew that, hey, if I grow 40% year on year, I need to grow my staff by 40%.
mhm.
So I know how many people I need to hire. There is a replacement rate of 20%. So I know how many people additional to the growth that I need to hire, which I need to replace for. And then there's year on year, I need to drive efficiencies worth 5%. So over time, the difference between cost and revenue, I mean, like your bottom line,
Sure.
actually becomes quite interesting. And that's what you mean by economies of scale in a services business. So that talk for me was super, like, especially for my services business, was super. I mean, it was eye
I mean,
opening
it,
in
it
that
makes
sense.
complete sense when you talk about it now. But when I look at our experience, I don't see the growth happening at that scale as, um, you know, consistently and easily as that. It's not
Hmm.
just about, and I mean, of course, it depends. The F&B industry is huge, right? There's so many different types of business. You could be in like the quick service format, you
Yeah,
could be in like super fine dining, you could be in, more casual dining, etc. So it's very, you could be in the delivery business. So it's all very
yeah,
different, and the pace of growth will vary depending on what
yeah,
you're in.
yeah.
So for example, in our business,
I mean,
I
you
don't
guys
think
are
it's,
right, like right at the top of the pyramid. And so, like the.
yeah, and I think that, our goal, at least for a large part in the beginning, was just about being able to stay at a certain level and just be able to deliver on consistency, right? That
Hmm,
was like a big goal for a
yeah.
long time. It wasn't about growth, because that in itself is a huge challenge. And I think that you can't think about growing
So
till
how
you've
do you
achieved that.
deliver, because that's very interesting, because consistency in a service, and that's what you guys are known for.
Well, so you don't grow is the thing. You kind of, it's like that Japanese, that sort of, they talk about the Japanese learning how to make sushi rice. They just do that for 6 months, right? Like
Hmm.
that's all, or years. In fact, I think that you just do that. You
Yeah,
do not do anything else, right?
yeah,
Like you perfect it.
yeah.
And I mean, that's probably an extreme example, but it was that for 5 years we only had the table.
Hmm,
We didn't do anything else, right? And
hmm,
for most people, they'd be like, what's wrong with you? You should have opened in North Bombay, or like, why are you not opening in a different city or
hmm.
whatever? You've seen success, now just go and open. And that would be the obvious thing to an outsider. But we recognized what it takes to even stay open for those five
Hmm.
years, let
Hmm.
alone open another one.
But Gauri, this what you're saying is so important. And I feel somewhere in India and corporate India, we reduce the emphasis on quality. What I mean is real craftsmanship,
couldn't
because
agree with you more.
you're talking about basically, this process that you talk about. I mean, I'm not saying that growth is not good. I'm saying it has its place. And I'm saying the way you look at things has also equally its place. And that's where, kind of magic comes from to a certain extent, right? Like, so, I mean, if you go in and you see, maybe it's slightly controversial what I'm saying now, but if you look at the kings who ruled in India and the kind of, infrastructure that they left behind, or the kind of buildings that they left behind, and you look at, what you see in the European post the Renaissance, and you see the craftsmanship within that, because there was a, that approach towards being obsessive about being able to create that. And I don't think they were looking at, oh, how fast is this person growing, or how fast is, how much I mean, yeah, of course, the territory was captured and there was looted, and hence it was possible to invest in that. I'm probably oversimplifying a lot of things here, but there is some truth to the fact that somewhere in today's world we've forgotten what you're talking about. So that's why I'm very interested in understanding about your process on consistency, not from the point of view of that, hey, does it compromise on growth or not, but really, how do you bring in this consistency?
I actually think that it's not about growth always. It's also about outlasting, right? A lot of times you see exponential growth happen, and then it all just comes crashing down as well, right? So I definitely feel that, of course, no one's in the business no one's doing it for charity. You're all in business. But I think that you have to slightly change your perspective on how business has to be achieved. And it's not always on size and scale. I think there's so much value to be had in building a brand. I mean, you're in this business of, helping build brands, right? And helping your clients build their brands, or define and, create brands. And I think that brand value often just comes in perfecting something, and perfecting it and delivering that perfection day after day after day.
Yeah.
And especially in our case, both Jay and I were completely new to the business, right? So there was no sort of rush. There was no, there was no benchmark that we were trying to match up to or follow or anything. It was us setting our own path and doing it at our own pace. And often it's very easy to constantly be seeing what's happening around you with, your peers, and feeling like, I'm not, how are they doing it so fast, and how are they? But we've been very sort of firm believers in doing it the way we have, which is very slow and steady. And, and like I said, it's not about not wanting to, reach a certain valuation or grow, but it's not the priority.
No, you have to do what's right for your business.
It's not the priority. I think the priority is to, at whatever level we're at, like today we're 7 brands between the various delivery and dine-in formats that we have. It's about, like, at every stage, on every day, ensuring that the ball doesn't drop on any of those. And you're still working on things in parallel, but at any point, if you feel like the ball's going to drop, then honestly, the growth isn't going to last very long.
Yeah. And, I think the other thing about growth is also about your category as much as it's about the entrepreneur. So I think sometimes the entrepreneur, for example, I'm sitting in a services industry right now, which is exploding in this, which is why the growth is coming. It's not like yes, I'm doing a few things right, but I also know that the industry is growing, and I also know that
the environment is conducive to growth right now.
Yeah. The environment is generally conducive to growth everywhere, but this particular stream is growing faster than others. So I think that is, we have to somewhere take that with a pinch of salt and recognize ourselves also that, look, actually, it's a lot beyond me, that this is what's happening, and, just kind of be focused on that. But I also really like about what you said about I feel a lot of what you're saying is you have to do what's right for the business.
And what's right for you, right? I mean, that comes back to being an entrepreneur, founder, etc., where you don't have to, there's no one size fits all for an industry or even a segment of the industry. Like, say you're in the delivery business. I mean, we have peers in the industry who've in COVID, launched, say, a delivery brand because delivery was huge, opened multiple locations in just the last 2 years. And, we're still at like one location for our 4 brands, right? But you have to kind of look at what your sort of focus is. And for us, it's being able to deliver quality. And if, we are able to build a team, it's not about building a team for the sake of building a team and saying like, I need to do like 3 locations by the end of this year or whatever. It's really, and again, personally, I feel like the idea is not to kill myself in the process, right? Like we started this because we love what we do. We love the business, we love food, we love sort of serving food and the whole F&B experience, providing the F&B experience, but it's not intended to sort of kill us in the process, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's really important. I mean, I say this to a lot of people in our industries that like, it's not a race, go at your pace. But yeah, I mean, talking about expansion and growth, I mean, you guys are going international now, and how are you sort of approaching that where you're not sort of physically in the same space? And, how are you again finding the right team members in a different, geography and also a different culture, right? It's not just like clients are probably used to a different culture. I mean, like and I know, you've talked about taking, an Indian sort of service company international, and that's what you want to that's the vision for Schbang. And of course, you can explain it more, articulate it better than I just did. But how are you sort of tackling that sort of culture, and both from a team standpoint as well as clients?
Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of work on this over the last couple of months. So a lot of it is pretty fresh. It started about 4 years back where I started to articulate saying that what we want to do is we want to take India to the world and we want to bring the best of the world to India. So as a services company, we know that in our line of business, you have the Americans in terms of Omnicom, you have the Brits in terms of WPP, now S4, you have the Japanese in terms of Dentsu and Hakuhodo, and you have the French in terms of Publicis and Avas. And we said that there's no Indian player. And if you see the landscape, a lot of the best marketing brains in the world are Indians serving different large organizations. We said that there's actually an opportunity there. And also with we're sitting on top of a very interesting demographic dividend. I didn't answer your Gen Z question, but I think that, this is, or I did to some extent, but like, I think that the population that we have right now is way more exposed to the world, is way more connected to the world, has the ability now to deliver to the world. With the IT wave, we had the ability to deliver to the world with respect to code. I think now we have the ability to deliver with code and creative and culture. So we are able to understand a bit more. So I think that therefore the demographic dividend that we're sitting on, with respect to India, and with us being able to be the world's kind of, we can serve the world sitting here. And also that's what, the last 3 years have taught us really. So that's now a lot of things coming together, which is my point also about like, things aligning for you. So I think that's the context to why I'm so bullish on it and why I'm spending a lot of my time trying to figure this out, and why I'm, I really want to get it done, and I am getting it done, and I will get it done, and I love this process of what I'm doing. So that's the why. Then, now as we're just setting up in the UK, it was very, very interesting because it's an oversupplied market with respect to creative services.
Right.
So I had to really figure out that if it's an oversupplied market with respect to creative services, firstly, the question was why UK also, because it's our first international expansion. So I deliberately chose the UK because we have the advantage of the English language. There is some historical reference. A lot of the advertising work that copywriters and art directors grow up on, and the people who love advertising, people who love being able to build iconic brands, they study a lot of the work of the UK copywriters and the UK art directors and creative directors. So I think that is why the UK, because it has a natural extension in that sense. So I had to really find an in to the UK, and that's what I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what our in could be. And that's where I saw that there is this whole game of growth marketing as more businesses are going D2C, and they're kind of like perfecting the consumer flow, the consumer journey with respect to, hey, if somebody bought something, can you automate something to say to them in 60 days, saying that, hey, you may need a refill,
Right.
and at 45 days you start talking to them in an automated fashion. What's that message got to be? How do you set up the underlying infrastructure for that? What should be the click-through rates for banners across the board in general for them to be staying in your campaign versus being put out of the campaign? Once you're in there, what should be the open rates for the emailers once you've got consumers? So this whole scientific journey of growth hacking and growth marketing on the digital side, and building a digital consumer experience, is something that we've gotten increasingly good at Shbang.
And you felt that there was a bit of a gap there in...
Yeah, I mean, that was my feeling. And then I went there and I tested it and I spoke to a lot of industry people. So, I was there for about 8 days, and I had, I think, every day about 3 meetings. So I'm, writing to people across industry and saying, hey, I want to just come and meet you, doing a lot of interviews with people with respect to, recruiting them. So we had a lot of people apply for the job because we positioned it that way, saying that, so one of our ads said, if you're looking to transform who are they into them, we're the right place to work with. So we had a lot of ambitious, driven people apply to that. So talking to them, talking to industry peers, talking to clients. I visited 2 conferences. So I heard all the chatter in the conferences, what people were talking about. One of the guys, Adam Wright, he spoke really well about growth marketing and spoke about the challenges in the industry. So then I went and met with him, and I said that, hey, is this really a gap? What's the gap? How can this model with, serving inside of the UK of, the team which does the strategy and really the consumer work and is able to stay close to the consumer, and the delivery team from India, how do you think that sounds? So we've been jamming and trying to work a bit on how to perfect that model now.
And is this where your sort of involvement with the proof analytics also comes in, with being able to analyze the data and use that effectively for this strategy?
Yeah, so it's a bit more than proof. So that's good, because now that whole practice has now evolved to being able to say, like, proof was a lot about like, hey, let me tell you where you spent the money that was effective. And here it's now saying, hey, let me tell you where you spend the money which was effective, but also let me help you plug the gaps which weren't, and then let me work with you throughout the year on that. So just one case that we had with a large global cloud ecosystem provider. So they basically sell a lot of cloud services to countries across the world. So we managed their entire web and their personalization and their MarTech journey. So their sales team basically came back and told us, saying that sales and marketing team basically came and told us, saying that, look, through the website, we want to sell $4 million of cloud. What ended up happening is at the end of the year, we sold $19 million of cloud through the website. And the answer was very, very simple, because they told us, saying that, look, we have 2,000 priority customers that we know we'll get business from. So we built 2,000 different personalized websites for each company. So let's say Tesla is a customer who wants to buy cloud. So every time somebody from Tesla would come in, and we had IP tracking based personalization engine
crazy.
To try to understand if somebody's coming from Tesla. So the website would say, hey, here's why our cloud solution is perfect for Tesla. And the website's also personalizing only auto
Are you serious?
white papers.
Wow.
And then the chatbot is also talking, it's a lot of work.
That's like hyper customization.
Yeah, because you have to also build the content for each industry. So our teams are sitting then building that content for each industry. And, then to that level of detail, saying that, look, now you're talking to Tesla, so the chatbot will talk for auto. And then if there's an interest, then the corresponding account-based marketing, which is all the emailers, will also go from that industry. So in this case, it was very, very required because it was a very high-value customer that we're going after and is going to translate into a lot of business. And, so that's a B2B example. And then on the B2C level, what we're doing is that we're actually building journeys for people. Let's say like you're in MAC Cosmetics and you bought, 2 combinations of Ruby Woo lipstick and another lipstick. And then you got to build a journey for that cohort of customer. So then really just watching that data and then figuring out, okay, this is cohort 1, this is cohort 2, this is cohort 3. These are the ones that shop more. So let's go after them to build the personalized content engine, and people really like being spoken to in a personalized fashion. So it's
Sure.
really taking a lot of the principles of,
I was
what
going
you
to
do in
say,
the
this is
F&B
exactly
industry.
what works for us, right? Like it's the whole thing the whole philosophy that our restaurant sort of thrives on is that you're a VIP at home. That's what we say, that you're treated as if you're like the most important person in our restaurant, but everyone is treated that way. And it's completely, the idea is to completely customize the experience based on someone's repeated visits to your restaurant, right?
Yeah,
And then you can build and you understand what their likes and dislikes are, and you kind of, zero in on making it as customized as possible. And that's exactly the same philosophy. Yeah.
So when we started Schbang, we had this coinage, it's a childish thing, but I'm really happy that it's now taking shape, because we said that a solution for a customer experience across holistic media is what creates a bang for our customers. So what I just told you about this case is actually that, and what we're then doing. So that's the service we're taking to the UK, because I also strongly believe that when you go to a new market, whether it's from Bombay, you go to Delhi, or you go to to Bangalore, a lot of it is what can you serve that market with. So I feel like this is also like when you can serve the market with something and you can fill in a gap and you have that mindset, then you're bound to succeed, because then you're going to bring in people who say that this is why I want to collaborate with you. So then we went and took in one of the other things that we started doing is started working with the IPA, which is the Advertisers Association in the UK. So we're now working with them to build some program around growth marketing so that we can train more people in the industry around that. So that's another part of like what can we serve. And I think to companies anyway, that's an offering that we're taking. So, and it has a natural fit with respect to the way we are kind of like delivering it from India, and we're having people in the front. So our head of business joins us in the next couple of weeks. So he's also a very senior gentleman who's worked across industry. So, and I think that that hiring is a whole different, I feel like hiring is a different podcast altogether, because it's so interesting, and the approach and how do you pick a candidate. But I think when you're going to a new market and you're not there, you need to really have somebody solid and somebody who's there. And, we're now structuring the contract in such a way that he's kind of has a piece of the business linked to the growth of the business. So that's that. And then we also, we've identified a company in Amsterdam that we are kind of partnering with then, in the sense that, where we're at is that we come in and we buy 55% of that company. And then, we work with them over the next 15 years to basically make their company also highly valuable along with what we're doing. So Amsterdam is a different beast because it's the global mecca of creativity. Design is at the next level. So, for us, the UK, and also the other thing is the UK, why I think growth marketing fits really, and this whole example of this web personalization that I gave, why it fits really well is because if you speak to a lot of people from the UK, you will see that their temperament is very, let's cut off the layers and let's get to the point. So they're very good with strategy, and they're very good with really distilling a problem down. And so if you can have that strength along with the Indian strength of delivery, then that's also like, being able to actually bring the strengths together. And that's also, I'm happy that there's some of it making the best of the world back to India.
So you bring that back to...
You bring that. And then with Amsterdam, I said to them that, look, what I really want you to do is I want you to sparkle your pixie dust on our creators. Because that's also to the other point which you said, this is why do people come?
Them. Yeah.
Why would people want to come to you is because you guys have this incredible brand that, where people come, they see transformation within themselves. So I think one is investing in somebody, and second is really, shifting the needle in the way they were before they were with you.
Yeah.
And I think if we can all as businesses aspire for that, and I'm not saying we always succeed with that, but if we aspire for that, then that's again that point of seva,
Yeah. No, I think that, a lot of times it happens very inadvertently. You don't think about that's what you're doing.
And you're absolutely right, because you can't call it that because it's highly egoistic if you say it that way.
Yeah.
But I think you have to also be aware that it can happen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think this is a good point to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to This Round is on Me. So listen, we haven't even sort of gone into, your business so much of what you're doing here and the whole, digital marketing. And I kind of sort of want to just spend a little time talking about social media, which to me is just exploding. I mean, you can't keep up with what's going on. And I know that's only one part of what you do, and it's a small part of what you do. But help us sort of Aam Aadmi sort of navigate this crazy, like, fast-paced world where, there's trends and there's this algorithm and there's that, and now there's like Web3, like people are sending me stuff about Web3 and, the metaverse and all of that. And it's getting a little crazy for someone who's not in that space. How are you guys navigating this world, I guess?
I feel like a lot of what you said about, you have to do what's right for you as the business and you as the entrepreneur, and therefore what you can do with it. And I think that's the approach that we take for a lot of the brands that we work with. So by default, often we try to strip then all of this digital stuff back to what's the purpose of the brand. So if you're Stay Free and your purpose is to be able to drive more young girls to ensure that when they're on their first period, that, they are educated, they know what, they know what they're going through. They know that, there's a product available for them. The product is a by the way. So can I serve that customer on her, who's going through that first period and is going through her first early years of her period? And then therefore, what are the relevant interventions? Because it's not, because like you correctly said, there's too much noise. So what is my role in my consumer's life? What am I solving for that consumer? And therefore, what's the best way to reach out to them? So then maybe I have influencers who are 18 years old who are talking to 13-year-old girls, and that's when I hire them. Or then I have, they're on a Takatak platform and that's where I reach them. But then I need to ask them saying, you please tell me now what you have about my consumer. And then there's also the messaging, which is more about then hearing the consumer and saying that, look, you please, because we're all living in our own little echo chambers and bubbles. So really going out and speaking to consumers and understanding consumers is very, very important. So that's what we train our teams to do. And that's what we encourage our teams to do. And that's why I think a lot of large companies and brands, they trust us with their brands.
I was going to say, because a lot of the time you can't just rely on the data you're getting from the medium. You kind of have to go, interestingly, you have that, where are you actually getting your information from and sort of tie the two together. And yeah.
So, coming back to that whole thing we did at the start about the whole level product market fit, that taught me so much about just calling the consumer and speaking to the consumer, saying that, look, really, what is going on in your life? What did you like about this? What do you not like about this? And then that's what we've just started this process within our teams. I'm saying we've just started it with a tinge of disappointment, because if somebody from my team is listening to this one, then, I've been screaming off my lungs for about 1.5 years now that we're mandating that we have to speak to at least 5 consumers a week of our client's customer. So, of our client's consumer.
Right, yeah.
So our customer's consumer. So we've got to speak to at least 5 of those and bring that back in, because you immerse that back in. That's what gives you the reality check.
Would you say it's like market research in a way, but not from a consumer product standpoint, but from a, information, information consumption.
Yeah. It's also about knowing your consumer and, knowing that you're not the same as that consumer. So it's a lot easier for like our people to understand a MAC Cosmetics consumer, for example. But can I understand a Godrej Head Eye consumer who is buying a 30 rupee sachet? Most of my people are living in, fairly urban centers. And now I'm fortunate that we have so many people joining us from tier 2 and things like that.
Because of work from home and things.
Yeah. And, so that's great. But I feel like we still need to learn so much more about the people that we have the chance to serve communication to. So it's our responsibility to know what they're going through.
Yeah.
Because, we look at, in our kind of worlds, the way we look at the way society is evolving, and, I was just seeing today that for Glow and Lovely, for them, the advertisement this year is about a girl who is finishing her pilot training. Oh no, she's finishing her law. And at the same time, there's people come for arranged marriage. And the whole tension in the ad is about, how arranged marriage is not bad, but she's got to prioritize her,
career.
She's got to give due importance to what she's doing. And that's where her source of pride comes in. That's where her glow comes from. And, so on and so forth. But it's not something that you and I would understand. We can send, it's not like we don't understand, but we don't deeply connect with it. So to be able to deeply connect with what your consumer is and what you're selling to that consumer, we need to know them.
Absolutely.
And then I think the rest of the stuff is very easy, because then if you know that, then you know whether radio is a medium, then you know whether, this, which of the digital mediums should you go to. Then obviously metaverse is not there. And, metaverse is obviously very, like I was listening to this, the team on Burberry, and they were talking about how for them, metaverse is about creative expression, because it really is about creating what your imagination, physical
wants
products,
to do, but may not be able to do. Yeah.
Exactly. So for a, like more in the edgy stuff around luxury, metaverse is cool. So I guess it's about then, it's a bit about like, for us also as marketers, it's about the practice, like it's how you spoke about the practice of being able to like, craft. So that's what we also do as, at the end of the day, we're serving. So that's what our joy also comes from.
Let's move away from the money and the business and talk about, Schbang for good. You are doing some incredible work out there, but tell us about that.
Yeah, that is, so I'll tell you honestly, Gauri, where it started from is that I think most of us have this gene that, I wish I could go and serve beyond myself.
Give back.
So I started doing it first just by going on visits to understand, a bit like what we just spoke about, this whole understand piece. I felt like I was very removed. So a lot of my friends who I was talking to, and I was seeing my own actions and I'll tell you, very interesting. So the first time I went to a village, my hero attitude was like, chalo computer lab lagate. It was so, I cannot explain to you how stupid it was. Because once I started going on subsequent visits, I understood that it's actually the women who are walking for 2 kilometers and back to get the water. There's a lack of supply of water. There's a stream, but you're not allowed to, bring up water from the stream. Even if you bring up water, there's no place for storage. Majority of the homes don't have toilets. The school has a school, but there's one building which is broken. So that needs infrastructure upgrade. The kids who go, the school is only till 4th standard. The kids who are going after 4th standard have to go for 2.5, 3 kilometers away, so they have the Pada, which is the main village, and then you have the, the main village. Suppose if there's the central and then there's the 13 Padas inside a main village.
Right.
So then they're all going into the main village, which is where the school is. So I had to first learn all of that. So my 2 years went in just studying that and understanding that. So it was a lot of, before Level came into my life, a lot of the weekends were around that. So that Saturday, Sunday was spent around going, make the visit, study, come back. And then, I think most of us have this habit of making notes. So I take my notepad and just scribble, understand the notes and understand what is needed and what is required. And then it started. So then I said that, okay, I have some resources to deploy. Let me start deploying it. And then I started talking about it, saying that this is what I'm learning. Not that this is what I'm doing, but this is what I'm learning. So it was more like, just let's learn along the way. So I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about farming. So I worked with, I went on the field with organic farmers. So I tried to understand the difference between organic and chemical farming and really, which yields come in which part of the year. I understood a bit of multi-cropping. I understood why that's a lot more challenging than doing, fertilizer-based farming. I understood like how basically they build organic fertilizer. I understood the return, how long it takes for them to deliver the return. Because if you do organic farming and you do just, if you've done cropping and then you've done fruits and then you've done vegetables, so that whole ecosystem to develop takes 3 to 5 years. And it's a lot of like labor. I went and planted rice. So it was like backbreaking. I like that day, I
I'm going to make you come to the table farm.
So, it was fun. And so then I narrowed down my focus, saying that now I know I've seen a little bit and I know that I'm more interested in being aligned to the work that I do. So, like and I'd actually love to know a little bit about the table farm and, how you do that. But like in a very quick nutshell, what I realized is that I have to be, as a company, serving in code and creativity. I have to be able to serve two people the skills of code and creativity. So I work with, schools primarily who are, so I work with schools to get kids ready to be able to receive code and creativity. And I work with colleges who have kids who have the aptitude to absorb code and creativity, to teach them skills of code and creativity. So that's aligned around education. And then around education, then it might be like, I mean, of course, it doesn't stop at computer lab. Then I realized that the computer lab has to be aligned with, you have to build the toilets, you have to be able to, sort of build up the infrastructure. You have to be able to pay for the teachers so that it becomes a consistent program. So now at Schbang for Good, we're still a very small team. We're a 3-member team where we have a program lead, we have a program coordinator, I mean, like a area manager, and then you have execution. So we've just kind of built that 3-tier system but now then we're hiring more people at the execution stage. So at this point in time,
and where is your sort of focus? Like, which area are you currently?
So we have one in Badlapur, which is an orphanage with 120 kids where they all stay there and they study there. So we take care of a lot of the infrastructure needs of that school, plus the education interventions in that school. So that's been a very interesting project. We have a project in Palghar. So in Palghar, again, we have a project which is working like almost like, how we had tuition. So like it's a pre and post school along with the schools to accelerate the learning. So that's one project in Palghar. Working on another project with Palghar colleges to be able to, I mean, our goal this year is to be able to touch 1,000 kids. So I'm like, how many people you have, you need to be able to touch those. And then maybe in 3 years, I'll say 10x of the number of people we hire. So that's how we transition. But with the Palghar colleges is there, then we have a project in Shirod in, just before Igatpuri. So there we have 2 villages where, again, we've done a lot of work with the schools there. But we also got a couple of women self-help groups that we funded for, sort of blankets and, small things that they're doing there. So then now that project we're continuing, but then we know that self-help group is not our alignment. Right. This was part of that whole exploration process. And then we have one small piece of work going on in Latur. So it's also very different parts of the state. But, now we're just sort of organizing it a bit better. So I think now our work is going to be more around the Badlapur-Palghar belt because it's focused. It's the areas which need intervention. And we have, at this point in Bombay also we have some work. So we work with the Sakhi for Girls Education team, which is out of Kandivali West. So they are, there's slum school inside for girls who, so there we do a program for the 25 brightest girls where we, work with them closely every fortnight. So those girls are then teaching the other girls in the surrounding slums on soft skills and, getting them ready for basically facing life. Right. So it's a combination right now, but it's getting more and more streamlined. So yeah, a lot of this is I went on ground, built relationships. You have to also win their trust. Yeah. So it was fun.
Yeah. It's not just about throwing money at a
I don't have that much money to throw. So I have to be able to purposefully do it.
Okay, so listen, on a, I guess...
No, but now we have to hear a little bit about this, the table farm.
That was probably, it's not a patch on what you're doing. And it's, our restaurant was very much, inspired by California, right? Which is where Jay lived for 16 years before moving back to India. And the food scene there, the whole food philosophy there is about, it's ingredient driven, right? So there's no cuisine. You don't think of a cuisine when you go to a restaurant. There it's about using the best ingredients, and they have an amazing microclimate where you get fantastic produce, and chefs are all about sort of showcasing that produce. And that was what we wanted to bring back to Bombay. But of course, there was back in 2009-10, there was not access to this kind of produce. And we have a small farm in Alibag where, I sort of was growing things just for personal consumption. And spinach happens to grow really well over there. And so we, I had a lot of it one day. I'd given it to everyone I knew and they were like sick of it. And we, I just dropped it at the restaurant on my way back from Alibag one day. And I said, guys, there's spinach here. And next day they were like, where did you get that from? We want more of it. And that's kind of when the penny dropped that, even though we have a small space, it can't supply everything that our restaurant needs. Why not start and, grow our own produce? Because that's essentially what inspired the restaurant in the first place, was knowing the source of your ingredients and getting the best ingredients. And before I sort of thought about it, and I don't have any green fingers, or I didn't back then, we really had to start from scratch. So everything that had been there, I didn't know what was in the soil. I didn't know, what chemicals had gone into it. And so we basically rebuilt that farm, and it took us 2 years. And also not just physically the space, but also the people who had been working on it, convincing them to change the way they'd been doing things was, I think, one of the biggest challenges. But I brought someone on board to help me with this because I had no clue about how to start. And I think today we're very proud of what we've built, and it's still a huge learning process in terms of, what grows, what doesn't grow. But that's what we're able to bring back to the restaurant. And so we started building an experience around that at the farm, where we even take people out there to explain to them what a real farm to table experience is, and just grow and just, build an appreciation for where your food's coming from, and not just about what comes on your plate and what you eat in the end product. But so we used to get people to actually build the beds, and like they had to mix the cow dung and the soil, and plant and harvest and do all of that, and wash the produce that they just harvested, and clean it and give it to the chefs, who would then prepare something. So I think just seeing what goes into it, even if on such a small scale, just changes your
for sure.
perspective on a salad that you're like, why should I pay so much? It's just leaves tossed with the dressing, right? So I think that was one of the things. And then we started working a lot with young kids in school who, this is part of their curriculum, so they want to kind of experience it firsthand. But again, when they come, and I've seen sort of the reaction of kids coming on the farm, and it's completely different. Obviously, it brings it to life, what they're sort of studying in textbooks. And I think that for me, again, this was not something I thought through, but I've realized that it can change how a child sort of their approach to food, when, the excitement of seeing something grow and then plucking it and eating it, it can just completely change. That same tomato, if you've plucked it and had it versus getting it from the sabzi wala and having it, is very sort of different. But the more you expose, children to this, it will sort of
shift in the world.
It will. There will be. And, it's a very sort of small scale at which we're doing it. But I think that's the motivation now. And I'm sort of getting clearer about why more people need to come out there and sort of see
that.
A
lot of the work I was also doing with the farmers was focused around organic farming, around moving farmers to organic farming.
Yeah.
And it's super interesting. We could talk about it.
I know. There's a whole conversation around that. And honestly, of course, forget what happened in Sri Lanka, which was like the other extreme of organic farming sort of going a little wrong. But, there is, it's a complicated space. It's not something that you can just, switch over to overnight. And
it requires an ecosystem. So I think I really love the work they're doing in Palghar, again, with BIF is the organization running it, and there's the people at Govardhan Eco Village that run it in Palghar, and they are, the seed banks that they've developed, and so there's 60 varieties of wheat built for that region, and over 100 varieties of rice built for that region. So farmers could really get a good combination of the produce, and how you grow it side by side, and how the therefore the crops and the soil becomes a lot more rich as well. And then you combine
but I think there needs to be like a simultaneous sort of shift in the consumer mindset as well.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about what you're saying, because everything that you said about that mindset, and that's what I really like about what you are doing and what you say about, these things, is because, and I go back to what you said about the, the Japanese sushi, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but the sushi method. And it's these shifts, and what I think is very, very important is you make these shifts at like the topmost level, because it happens there. That's where the ship starts steering in another direction, and then the whole shebang follows. Really, like I feel like that's what's really important about what you're doing.
Yeah, and a lot of it is accidental, but hopefully there's clarity around it at some point.
Yeah. Okay,
listen, I could go on talking to you, and we could probably have a separate show on like all the different topics that we've covered, and But last thing I have to say, so when I was doing my research and, I went to I Googled you on an app to find what podcasts you'd been on and, what you've been saying before this. And what popped up was you, the music artist. So
Yeah.
you are full of hidden talents, clearly, or not so hidden, considering you popped up on Spotify as a music artist. And I was like, what? Like, is this the same person?
See, this is a reason I crave for the opportunity to be invited at a podcast
What, so
like
you can
yours.
sing?
No, not so that I can sing. So that somebody like you says, hey, there's some music, please go and see it. I mean,
Yes,
I get to plug it, sing, please go and listen to it.
And then, of course, I started listening to it and I was like, dude, what is going on here? And then I was like, I'm getting distracted. I have to go back to doing my research. But what's going on is that how on earth do you have time for anything else, honestly?
So so the music I write is also very linked to the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So the first song I wrote was called Ujjare. And it's a song I released about 2 years back on 21st August. So it's about almost 2 years back now on World Entrepreneurship Day. And the song was written about the journey of an entrepreneur. So, so the one of the choruses is रास्ते में आएगी बहुत रुकावट लोग कहेंगे तू है बनावट खुद की मर्जी का तू मालिक है जा अपने अंदर खोज वो जो रोशनी तुझ में है छुपी और उठ जा क्योंकि बंजारे रास्ता लंबा है तेरा बंजारे रास्ता लंबा है तेरा. So it was it's a bit of that. So like I write a lot of my music linked to what I'm seeing in life. Or the other one was Udja Bandheya, which was it's about flying. So it was like nuch jave घोंसला तब टूट ना पावे हौसला परनू पसार अपने और उड़ जा बंदेया. So it was like like it's when your chips are down, and all of us go through those moments. I mean, a lot of some people who listen to it find it a little too boring, but I've grown up on listening to you too, and I like music that has meaning. So I'm trying to make some of that.
Are you gonna croon a couple of lines for us? Or are you gonna force us to go and find it?
No, I could. I mean, if I have to, actually I could. If I had to really sing, I always like singing this song Fakiri, which is one of my favorite songs. It's a poem written by Sant Kabir. So if I have to really sing that, I could sing a couple of lines from that. So it goes like this. इंसान के रहीम राम के आगे ईश्वर के हर नाम के आगे भक्तों के काफिर के आगे शून्य प्रथम माँ घिर के आगे हो खड़ा रे कबीर पहने अपनी फकीरी सीना ठोके झाड़ता है अपनी गरीबी दुनिया का भय नहीं बोले सच्ची बोली रे चीने गया क्या कोई उसकी खाली है जो झोली रे बड़ी ताकत है फकीरी में. And then it goes on, but it's a great song.
Wow, I couldn't think of a better way to end the show. I don't think I want to say anything that's going to follow that. That was beautiful, and thank you so much, Harshil.
Thank you, Gauri.
We may have to do a part 2 at some point
Oh,
for
that would
all
be
the
amazing.
things that we didn't discuss. So yeah, but thank you again.
Thank you for calling me.
Hey, if you've got to this point in the show, you deserve a cruffin. Thank you for listening, and I hope this conversation leaves you thinking about everything from leadership to entrepreneurship to co-founders to music lyrics to giving back and so much more long after you've listened to us, as that's the effect it's had on me. And seriously, if you're in Bombay, find me on Instagram at Gauri Devidayal and drop me a DM, and we'll really, really get that cruffin across to you, because this round is on me. I hope you enjoyed tuning in today. Do catch the earlier episodes when you get a chance. And more importantly, I would love to hear from you with your thoughts on the show. You can find me on Instagram at Gauri Devidayal or on Twitter at Gauri Details or LinkedIn. Either way, sit back and relax because this round is on me.